Just returned from Houston, and I'm here to wrap up UFC Fight Night Strickland versus Hernandez for you. What a night! I give the prelims on a scale from 1 to 10 a 4.5, and the main card, since it's a fight night, an 8.5. So, an overall 7.7. Not much happened on the early prelims. The two fighters that I was paying attention to were Yadier Del Valle and Jean-Paul Laboz-Noyani. The jury was still out for me with Del Valle's potential given his 10-0 record, but that was derailed as he came up way short against Jordan Levitt, who out-grappled and out-controlled Del Valle on the ground, giving Levitt a win in every one of the 3 rounds. It's evident to me that Del Valle's got a lot of work to do, both on the feet and in grappling, especially or even just against veteran opponents. Now, next up was welterweight Jean-Paul Laboz-Noyani, and he was making his debut against veteran Phil Rowe. I had Jean-Paul hovering right outside my top 15 prospect list in that video, but Dan and Laura Senko, who do the weigh-ins, listed Jean-Paul as their #1 prospect earlier this year. So I was wondering if I missed something and was looking forward to this fight to tell me more. All in all, it was a solid but not spectacular win for Jean-Paul. He showed strong pressure and aggression early, particularly in rounds 1 and 2, and he effectively closed the distance against Rowe. He landed leg kicks, he got takedowns, he had control time. He came in with elbows and sub attempts. He definitely proved that he belongs in the UFC. However, it wasn't dominant or highlight reel worthy. As for Phil, he started out slow, but once he found his range, he showed flashes of talent and he used his reach to land clean single shots. Phil rallied I think it was round 3 with a big flurry, and he rocked Laboz-Noyani. So defensively speaking, Phil survived JP's ground threats numerous times, and he worked his way back to his feet, earning the split decision. So this was a solid debut for JPL, but in the lion's den of the welterweight division, it's going to demand a lot more dominance from JPL moving forward. In contrast, my third prospect on last night's watch list is another welterweight contender, Jacoby Smith, who's someone I did highlight on my overall top 15 prospects video. Jacoby's fight started with his opponent, Josiah Harrell, attempting an early takedown, which was surprising since Kobe is the wrestling phenom. However, Kobe immediately had an insane reversal and he transitioned to top control. It was fast and it was impressive, guys. This was a textbook display of his Oklahoma State pedigree to so quickly and instinctively go from defense to offense within seconds. Kobe was able to maintain top control and unload vicious hammer fists, knocking Harrell unconscious to get the win. Unfortunately, it was late stoppage from ref Kerry Hartley and 2 late hits from Kobe Smith, which was not good. I had 2 flooding emotions. I was worried if Harrell was going to be okay, and at the same time, I was super happy for Kobe. I was relieved to see Josiah get up, and I was glad he went to the hospital right away. In summary, Kobe's explosiveness and his high-level Oklahoma State wrestling were displayed perfectly last night, and this solidifies to me that he's a top prospect in this lion's den of a welterweight division. Guys, before I feature the rest of the fights on the main card, I want to go back and I want to give a shout out to the featured prelim, Chidi and Njokuani versus Carlos Leal, which in my opinion should have won fight of the night. And it really was the only exciting fight in the prelims. Both guys came in with their KO power and they showed us heart and a stand-up war. Leal was hyperactive basically, and he was relentless, throwing a diverse 4 and 5 piece combinations, but it was back and forth exchanges with Njokuani fighting through the pressure and throwing brutal leg kicks and effective counters. He rocked Leal a couple of times. I'm telling you, it was striker's delight. The two of them just traded bombs for a full 15 minutes. and they really showed each other respect at the end of the fight. These are the kinds of fights and attitudes that we love to see as fight fans, and it's too bad that they didn't get the fight of the night bonus. Next up, it was Michelle Pereira and H-Town homeboy Zachary Reese. Not much to report on this one, except how crazy the crowd went booing when Michelle Pereira claimed he got 2 nut shots and 1 eye poke. We know that Pereira has questionable cardio, and he definitely got more rest on those timeouts. However, Zachary Reese also got the extra rest, and it didn't help his game much at all. Reese rallied in the second round with activity, but overall, he just had no defense against Pereira's jabs down the middle, and he got sloppy once he was tired. I guess everybody gets sloppy when they're tired, but I just noticed it extra with him where he was kind of wobbly to begin with. So Pereira got the win there. Next up, it was Jacoby's fight, and I went over that one already, so I'll move on. After that, it was Melquizael Costa versus Dan Ige. Dan looked great in the beginning of the first round when he was able to close the distance, and Mel was a little bit off to a slow start in the beginning, but he came back with some aggressive bursts of activity, and then ultimately that beautifully timed spinning back kick for the knockout. Wow, super impressive because he knocked out the never been finished Dan Ige. Costa called out Diego after the fight, but I think it's way too early for that. I also think it's early for him to fight people like Zalal and Steve Garcia because they're fresh in their rankings, and I want to see more of them before one of them are knocked out. So I'd like to see Costa fight Brian Ortega, if Brian Ortega can even make weight at this point. Moving along, we have Sergey Spivak and Ante Dalia. I really enjoyed this fight for a heavyweight fight, but this one was good. Dalia was throwing volume. He really wasn't committing to them because he was worried about Sergey's counters, which were landing. Sergey landed a check hook, which cut Dalia above the eyebrow in the first round. So even though Dalia threw more strikes, Dalia was wearing more of the damage. I kept wondering why Sergey didn't shoot at all in the first 2 rounds. But that said, he was able to showcase some improved striking, and he ended up getting the unanimous win. I thought it was really lovely at the end. He dedicated it to his dad, who had just passed at the end of the fight, and that was very meaningful. Next up was the co-main event, Jeff Neal versus Uros Medic. I've always thought the 12-3 and 100% finish rate Medic was underrated, and last night he proved it with this big win. Jeff started out cautiously, throwing some body jabs, but he got caught clean when Medic opened up, and then he delivered that sudden and violent left hook to the temple of Jeff Neal in only 1 minute and 19 seconds into the first round. It was the second scariest knockout of the night, with Jeff Neal going stiff. Very scary. I hope Jeff is okay, and I hope that he's considering retiring at this point with those 2 big knockouts. This win will put Medic into the welterweight rankings, and afterwards he called out Leon Edwards, which I think is a good matchup. And finally, for the very exciting main event, Sean Strickland versus Anthony Hernandez. Even though there were more fluffy Anthony Hernandez fans at the Toyota Center, a huge part of the crowd was roaring for Strickland. The fight kind of started out slow. It was very tactical in round 1. Strickland was using his stiff jab, his footwork, his range control to pepper Fluffy. He stuffed Fluffy's early attempts to close the distance and shoot for takedowns. And even though Fluffy kept pressing forward, Strickland was dictating the pace, and he just had overall more volume. Rounds 1 and 2 were mostly Strickland's, and as expected, he showed perfect takedown defense and turned it into basically a striking clinic, frustrating Fluffy because he couldn't take the fight to the ground. Ultimately, in round 3, at like 2 minutes and 23 seconds, Strickland landed an impeccably timed knee to the body that just doubled Fluffy over in pain, causing him to backpedal to the fence. And it was at that point, Strickland, he smelled blood and he swarmed in with a barrage of punches, like loopy, like it reminded me of a meme, dropping Fluffy to the cage. He kept continuing to punch, and Herb Dean came in with the stoppage. Guys, this was Strickland's first finish since 2023, and this snapped Fluffy's win streak. And Sean got the fight of the night honors, so he looked excellent. I mean, I picked Fluffy for the win, but Sean looked awesome last night, and he deserves the props for the big win. All right, guys, what did you think of the fight last night? Did you have any disappointments? Did you think the prelims and the early prelims were as lackluster as I did? It was, like I said, good to see Jean-Paul Labose-Noyani make his way into welterweight. With this kind of power, I think he's going to have to step it up a notch. But all in all, yeah, like I said, the fight was a good 7.7, and I look forward to hearing your comments below. Let me know what you thought.